And talking about theory, this is a concept that I often think about, the canary in the coal mine, and I think of it in the terms of movie analysis. And what I mean is that I have to explain the expression, because the expression comes from mine excavation in the 19th century. So 100 years ago, when you were down in the mines, and the miners were afraid of getting poisoned or having the oxygen go too low down in the tunnels. So what they did was that they brought birds. The saying is that they brought canary birds, because the canaries were more sensitive to poisonous gas in the mine. So if the canary bird in the mine dropped dead, then it was time to get out of the mine, because then it will soon start to be dangerous for the humans. So the concept, or the term, the canary in the coal mine, is a kind of early warning system idea. And what I mean is that when we look at movies, movies can give us an idea. It can reflect, it can mirror ideas, attitudes, and so on that we have in society. It's almost like a kind of psychoanalysis of our own society. For example, when you're doing an ordinary action movie and you're portraying the hero is quite often portrayed as working class, while the bad guy, the villain, is quite often portrayed as a kind of upper class and listen to opera and so on. And I believe very much that that kind of observations of how the movie makers portray different things, that tells us something about how we people really think, and our attitudes and so on. Movie making is to a high degree collaborative art. In most cases, when you do a movie, you are many people, sometimes even hundreds of people in the largest feature films. And many of these people are either creative people that are making design decisions and influencing things like the script, the production design, and so on. And then you have the other kind of people that are craftspeople, that are actually building things, building sets and so on. And usually in the movie business you have a kind of division between the craft people and the creative people, but they quite much blend into each other also, actually. And then of course you have the business people, the producer and the other people that takes care of management, the budget and so on. But so in a typical movie production you have many different artists and craftsmen that together create artwork, the final movie. And sometimes these different artists are going in different directions, and then you have a catastrophe often. But when the director, because that is the responsibility of the director, when the director managed to make everyone go in the right direction, in the same direction, when all artists are working towards a common goal, then you achieve what is sometimes called organic unity, so that everything fits in the movie and work together. One aspect of digital movie making is that it is easier today to make movies and news and documentaries and so on with fewer people. In news production, for example, sometimes it is only, or often actually in Sweden, it's only one person that goes out into the field and record interviews and so on. And also when it comes to drama, short films, for example, sometimes a short film can be produced by only one person, especially animated short films. And that is an effect of the digital production development. But the standard is that it's a collaborative art. And in that aspect, it is a little bit similar to architecture, for example, and music, which is also partly collaborative. This is a common saying that movies are truth 24 times a second, because every image in the movie is, of course, a real image, an actual image of something that have been in front of the camera. Usually you say this about non-fiction. But you could also say that movie making is effects 24 times a second, because every image that you have in the movie are created in some way. And this is true, I believe, even for non-fiction, for documentaries and so on. We will talk about indexicality in another lecture. And the idea that the photographic image doesn't lie, that is a very old idea, about 100 years old. And nowadays we know that the photographic image can lie. We all know that it's quite easy to adjust and manipulate images in Photoshop, for example. And many of us have been watching these behind-the-scenes documentaries that are supplied on DVD discs. So we know a lot about digital visual effects. So if you really think about it, you know that movies are effects. But it is still quite easy to forget about that and believe that a photographic image is truth. One example of that is that in Sweden, the courts are still using photograph and movies as evidence, and that's acceptable, of course. But you have to be problematize that. You have to be skeptic about the photographic image. And there have been some cases, especially surrounding the shootings in Gothenburg, when there was a EU meeting in Gothenburg 10 years ago. There was a police movie cut together by the police that was used as evidence in court, and it has been much criticized after that. So it is important to realize that that even if it looks photographic, it can be highly manipulated, even in documentaries. Because when we talk about effects, we don't only talk about special effects or visual effects. Movie in itself is an effect. When you set up a camera and you have a frame like this, you cut out a piece of reality. And the decisions about where the camera will stand and where it will point and the lens and so on, and all that are design decisions, and all that are effects. Because as you see in this example, in this image, you can see that I sit here at my workstation, but in this image, you get a different impression about where I am and so on. And this is only changes in camera position and lens, but still it's very different images. So this is an example of an effect. And editing is, of course, a very important effect. By editing, you create a story. And for example, you can have a story where you have exterior shots of a building and interior shots of a building. And when you cut it together, it looks as if it's the same building and it's shot on the same day and so on. But in reality, it might have been two different buildings and it might have been shot on different days. And it is really quite strange that editing works, because what you do in editing is that you instantaneously shift between two images. And still it feels very natural for us. And that isn't that strange? Well, if you think about how people see, you realize that, or if you measure how people shift their gaze, you can see that people are shifting the gaze very instantly. If I look towards a person over there, and then I shift to that person over here, I don't scan or move the image, the eye like this. I don't pan with my eyes. What I do is that I very quickly shift the gaze in a fraction of a second. So we don't pan with our eyes, we shift quickly with our eyes. So you could say that what you actually do with your eyes and with your brain is that you actually edit reality. And that might be why it feels so natural to have editing in a movie, because we do it ourselves with our own eyes, with our gaze. And this is an idea that have been written about by Walter Murch in a book that is called In the Blink of an Eye. And Walter Murch is one quite famous editor. He was one of the editors of Apocalypse Now, for example, and The Unbearable Lightness of Living. And he has written a short but very, very good book about movie making and editing. So I can really recommend that book.